wanted to have a deep, profound experience. My focus just narrowed down to the tiniest little space on the tip of my nose. I had this entity above me, and I had electricity pouring through my arms for maybe 3 days after. But my body was becoming more and more refined. My physical body obviously was no longer, and I was in a light body, and that light body was becoming more and more refined. It was becoming more and more subtle. A few months ago, I uploaded a video where I spoke about my out-of-body experience during a 10-day Vipassana retreat, where I accessed higher planes of existence, and I actually met my meditation teacher on one of these higher planes during this experience. And quite a lot of you started to ask me questions to elaborate on the experience and ask for guidance as to how you can have this kind of experience happen to you. So I thought I'd make another video about the experience, but also at the end giving you advice and guidance on the things that I did that you could implement to hopefully bring about this kind of experience for you, either now or in the future. If you didn't see that initial video, then my name is Ben. I was introduced to meditation by my dad when I was about 6 years old, and I've not meditated consistently since I was 6, but I was introduced to it at that age. And I wasn't just taught by my dad, I was taught by my dad's teacher, who was a real meditation master. He was someone that would access higher planes all the time. He would talk about subjects with such knowledge that you just knew that this person knew more than the ordinary man or woman. He was so advanced, and there were lots of things that happened throughout the years that proved to me that he was way more advanced than the average person. So it's hard for me to prove that, but through my own experience, I know that to be the case. And he then proved it to me without any question by meeting me on a higher plane during this meditation experience. So I was getting to the point in my meditation practice where I felt like I was hitting a ceiling. I was having lots of nice experiences. The meditations were very blissful. My mind had got very calm. I was seeing lights and things like that occasionally. They were very nice, but I felt like that was the ceiling at that point. They weren't changing much beyond that. And I was like, I really just want certainty now. You know, I'm teaching a lot of people. I'm talking about things that I pretty much know are true, but I've not experienced them myself. And so this desire came about within me that I wanted to have a deep, profound experience, and I wanted to know more. I wanted to be certain of things. And so I started then, as this crept up in me, to look at where I could go to really dedicate myself to this craft for a period of time, an intense period of time. I've got a business and things, so I couldn't take myself away for too long. I've got a girlfriend and everything else. But I just wanted to go away for like a couple of weeks and just dedicate myself to meditation and go hard. So I ended up signing up to a 10-day Vipassana meditation retreat, which is a silent meditation retreat. You go away for 10 days and you basically wake up every morning at like 20 to 4. You meditate for 10 hours a day, and you're sitting in a hall in silence. You eat 2 meals a day. It's very strict, and it was perfect. It was exactly what I was looking for. I wasn't going on it to learn, not to say that I didn't have lots that I could learn, and I did learn lots, but I went there to push, to go deeper and have an experience. And I did. And after around 7 days, I was getting very deep in the meditations. Lots of other experiences were starting to happen. But on day 7, I sat down to meditate, and I started to just tune into my breathing, nothing out of the ordinary. My focus just narrowed down to the tiniest little space on the tip of my nose. There was a little sensation just developed out of nowhere on the tip of my nose, and I tuned into it, and my focus just went absolutely laser-like. And it was the only thing that existed in my mind at that time. Nothing else existed. Everything else went away, and my mind just narrowed down to the tiniest space on the tip of my nose. As this happened, my legs started to feel as though they were going numb, which felt very strange. It didn't feel like I'd been meditating long enough. So I hadn't been sitting long enough. So I started to wiggle my feet, and I could feel them perfectly fine. And then as soon as I tuned into the sensation on the tip of my nose again, the legs started to feel as though they were going invisible. This sensation gradually rose all the way up until eventually it reached the top of my head, and my entire body, a bit like a superhero you might see on a film where they start to go invisible. My entire body was invisible. And simultaneously as that happened, I had a huge energy release that shot down my arm and came up the other arm and then just circulated around the entire body. And there was electricity was coming off of my hands, like little strands of electricity were coming off of my fingers. This energy that felt like it was coming through a pipe, like that big, was pumping around my entire body. And at the same time that was released, I was then experiencing myself at a higher plane. And I wasn't just static in another plane. I was traveling through planes. And the closest thing that I can liken it to is traveling through space. Felt like I was traveling through space, and the space that I was traveling through was broadening. So the experience of everything around me was getting bigger. Weirdly, and this won't make much sense unless you've had some kind of experience like this, everything became invisible. So at the higher planes, beyond this physical plane, obviously beyond the astral plane, which is the next one along, everything starts to become invisible, and it's a mental plane. It's not a physical plane anymore. This is the only physical plane, but even in some of the other planes, things appear physical, although they're not physical. Having said all that, even this physical plane, it appears physical, but it's actually not physical. Everything becomes more real. This is the biggest thing that I would say, is that everything started to become more real. This was not a psychological experience. This was not some dreamlike, vague experience that was happening in some weird part of my consciousness. This was the most real experience I've ever had. This was more realistic than this physical reality. That's the biggest thing that I could ever, if that's the one thing I could get across to you, that would be it. The experience of accessing higher planes is more realistic than the reality that you're experiencing now. The reason for that is because you're actually going home. You're going back to what is your reality. We're not experiencing our reality now. We think we are because we think we're human, but we're not human. We're spirit. Once you start to leave the physical realm and go up the planes, once you start experiencing higher and higher planes, you're actually getting closer and closer to what is reality. So everything feels more real, not in a physical way, of course, but just it feels more home-like. It feels like you're going home, which is what you're actually doing. The planes all stack upon one another, and all of the planes are here and now. The planes of existence that people talk about, that I'm talking about, aren't in some far-off land. They're all here and now. They're all one with the source. They're all one with the divine. They're all actually the divine that has lowered its vibrational rate to appear physical. So everything that you're experiencing now is a manifestation of the one source. Some people would call that God. So at all times you are experiencing God, but you're not experiencing God at the highest level that you could. When you start going up the planes, you're experiencing God at higher and higher levels of consciousness. So effectively, you're experiencing yourself at higher and higher levels. As this happened, I was going through the planes, and there are 11 planes of existence, by the way, and they're not numbered. So it's difficult to know which plane you're at, especially when you do this for the first time and you don't have a clue what's going on. But my body was becoming more and more refined. My physical body obviously was no longer, and I was in a light body, and that light body was becoming more and more refined. It was becoming more and more subtle. So as I was going up the planes, I was then accessing the body that is appropriate for that particular plane. And when I got to a certain place, which I don't know what plane this was, and there would be more, otherwise I would have reached the divine, the absolute, I had this entity above me, which was just a massive energy, basically. That's the only thing that I can describe it as. And this isn't something, we start to move beyond normal human words that we can use when talking about things that are beyond the human plane, beyond the physical plane. This was just a massive energy that I knew to be my meditation teacher, the energy of him, because we associate people as being the people, but they're not. They're an energy source, and because of his advanced level, this was the energy source that was associated with him. And I didn't know this to be the case at that time. I just saw this energy source and was totally overpowered by it. I felt like a little ant in comparison to this energy source, but wasn't intimidated, but just felt minute. After the experience, I had this experience happen, by the way, for many, many days after. Every time I sat down to meditate, I'd have this same kind of experience without the initial energy surge. And I had electricity pouring through my arms for maybe 3 days after. It was very, very, in the end, it ended up being quite intimidating. But anyway, after this meditation retreat, I contacted my meditation teacher. He was the first person I called. I was like, what the hell just happened to me? Knowing he would know. And he said, oh, we had a great time up there, didn't we? It was the first thing that he said on the phone, and he was laughing. He knew straight away. And then it clicked immediately that energy source that I noticed and was very aware of was his. And he talked to me in lots of detail about what had happened and what I was experiencing, and lots of things matched up absolutely perfectly to prove to me without any question that he was there and that was him. And that can be very hard to believe for some people, but this is the truth of it. And people have asked me, has it changed your experience of the physical reality? And the answer is yes. You can't have an experience like that and come down to human form again and be thinking the same way, because your consciousness has been stretched beyond the normal scope. And so, yeah, when I came back down, I was kind of existing in a physical way. I was physical, obviously. I was in my body and I was doing my normal things, but my consciousness was in a different place. So I was wanting to talk to people about things that were so far off that they wouldn't have understood. So it took a little bit of grounding for me to come back down to reality. And I'm quite fortunate that I've got a girlfriend who isn't actually spiritual at all. It works very well for us, a bit of a yin and yang situation, but she's not spiritual. And so she actually grounded me very well, because she's very polite and accepting of my beliefs and what I do, but because it's not her interests, she'll only push so far with questions, and then, she wants to talk about normal stuff. So naturally, when I wanted to talk and tell her about everything, she wasn't reciprocating what I was telling her. The interest wasn't there, and I knew that. And so it made me come back down to earth in a way. So I saw this as a positive. My experience of physical reality took a little while to adjust back to, and it suddenly made me realize I was suddenly starting to look at the world as if I was further away from it, rather than being right up against the world and being entangled in it and being attached to everything and thinking only in physical terms and on having desires and aspirations for things within the physical realm. My desires and aspirations were then for things beyond the physical realm, and have been since. And I don't feel as attached to the world. I don't feel as entangled in the world. I feel like I understand the temporary nature of the world to a much better degree now than I ever did before. I understood it. It was there theoretically, but my experience of that is totally different now. Lots of other things. I gained lots of truths about things that I was teaching that I knew theoretically, but I hadn't experienced yet. So it was a profound, profound experience. If I had some advice for you, if you're listening to this now and you think, God, I want that experience. I want to have an out-of-body experience. I want to have a experience of a higher plane. The first thing I would say is look at your intent. You need that intent to be there. You need that desire to be there for this experience to happen, because the human mind is so powerful that whatever we want, eventually we will get. By the law of attraction, when we think in a certain way, we start to bring that thought into existence. So for most people, they're only thinking in terms of the physical realm. So what do they bring to themselves? Things within the physical realm, which is fine because we need that. But as we start to progress in a spiritual manner, as we start to want to understand what is beyond the physical, we have to start matching our thoughts to that. We have to start thinking about higher realms. We have to start aligning ourselves and connecting with the divine. So repeating the names of the divine. If you were someone who was a follower of Jesus, for example, you could repeat the name of Jesus. If you believe in God, just repeat the name of God or ask for guidance. If you were a Hindu, you could repeat the name of Krishna. Aligning yourself with the divine, communicating with the divine, and having some mental time that is dedicated towards thinking beyond this physical realm. Meditation and things like that are all profound in giving you that space and actually giving you the time to think beyond physical matters. So the first thing is your desire. You have to desire this experience or a experience for something to start to happen. If things do happen to you without that, you've probably at some point in previous lifetimes desired this to happen and you're only receiving it now. So you do have to think about it. The second thing is alignment. If you're not able yet to manage matters within this physical realm, so if you're overeating, if you're watching too much porn, if you drink too much alcohol, if you do drugs, if you are consumed by cigarettes, with the greatest of respect, you're not yet able to manage this physical realm. And for your progression, you would be better off learning and managing everything within this physical realm as best as you can. Of course, you're going to make mistakes, but having general control over how the body works, over the senses, over the mind in this realm. At the same time, having aspirations to go higher, but equally working heavily on things within this realm, getting yourself aligned, getting your mind-body experience to be streamlined. To access higher planes, you have to fill yourself with divine light, divine energy. And to do that, you need to be aligned, because like a vessel, if you've got lots of leakages, and these leakages are in lack of control, watching too much porn, drinking to excess, you're not able to manage the influx of energy that it takes for you to go into a higher plane. It takes a lot of energy for you to go upward. So you need to get yourself streamlined. You need to make your vessel sealed. And to do that, you have to look at all of the areas in your life where you're not yet in control, you're not yet in alignment. Start to align them. Obviously, they're not going to be perfect. We're human, we make mistakes all the time, but we need to get to a point where we lessen all of our mistakes and we get ourselves to a good, aligned place. And they're the two key bits of advice. Alongside that, learn a meditation method, a proper method, not some guided rubbish that you see on an app. Learn a proper method of meditation. Do it every day. Do it consistently. Go into it with the intent that you want to go further. You want to understand yourself more. And give yourself time. This stuff doesn't happen immediately. It takes a lot of time to go beyond and access higher planes. So I'm going to leave it at that. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you on the next one.